and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
All right. You ready to be two guys talking about Barbie?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Well, you know, with Indiana Jones film, we wanted to sing the theme song, but you know, you were like, well, we can because we're out of tune, and then that embarrassed me, so I wasn't going to do that. And then during Mission Impossible, it's almost hard pressed not to sing that song. And now when I was taking a shower right before this, I was like, okay, how do I re-alter the lyrics to I'm a Barbie girl living in a Barbie world? How does that work? And I was like, no, I'm a Barbie boy. No, that doesn't. I'm a Barbie guy. No, you know what? If I'm going to sing it, I'm just going to sing the song. I'm not, but so I am all about it.
Were you excited about this movie? Like, I didn't really get excited about it until I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay. I mean, I knew Greta Gerwig was involved, and then I found out that Greta Gerwig and her partner Noah Baumbach co-wrote the script, and then found out she was directing, and I was like, all right, that makes me like a little bit more excited. But there have been multiple times where someone is kind of like cashed in on something and been like, you know what, I'm just going to do a one for them so I can do a one for me or whatever. And I just assumed this was going to be that. But then once I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, I'm a little bit, I'm in, you know, I'm more excited about it. And Steph was really in. She was just like, and we were talking about it. She didn't really like own a lot of Barbies, but she had friends that had a lot of Barbies, and she would go over to their house and play with their Barbies. But that wasn't like, she was more into sports and stuff like that. And she had stuffed animals, and there were other things that she was into, just not specifically Barbies, which, I mean, she's a veterinarian. She had stuffed animals. That kind of makes sense.
I don't know if excited is the word. All I know was that I wanted to see it as soon as possible so I could scroll through my phone and not see any spoilers, not see any Easter eggs, not see any clever things that I didn't want to be given away before I saw the film. So I was excited about seeing it because I wanted to know what it was. I had to know how these filmmakers, this filmmaker, Greta Gerwig, what was her take on it? Because, you know, she's done some pretty incredible stuff so far, and what it had to have had something that was more than just maybe your stereotypical view of what you think a Barbie film would be. And side note, back to what you said about being two guys, that's the brilliance of this film. That's why this film is brilliant, because you are you and I am me. We are not you and me together. We are not me and you together. You are your separate person and I am a separate person. So if I want to be into a Barbie movie, whether or not I'm male or female, it doesn't matter. It's all encompassing. It's all inviting. And it's a world where everybody can participate. Was I expecting what I got? Not at all. Was I exhilarated and excited afterwards? Absolutely. It's a triumph. I cannot contain my excitement anymore. I am so glad that we're recording a podcast. I'm glad we have a podcast to talk about, because this film by far is the best film of the year so far. I'm not saying it's going to be my favorite overall. I'm not going to say it's going to be the best overall, whatever that means, but it is top notch, well done. And it comes down to one reason only. It's extremely well written. And I will come back to that over and over and over again in the podcast. Is it extremely well acted? Absolutely. Is it extremely well directed? Absolutely. The production value is outstanding. But the words on the page are what gave everybody the indication of what they were supposed to do. It has to be that, because there's no way you could just create that character. Create those characters. It had to have been written and had to be so specific that the actors knew exactly what they were doing. Did they fumble to try to find it? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how these people at that tier of acting deal with it. I've heard stories about how people struggle and then the camera rolls and then they get it. Their struggle, they shoot for 3 months and they never get it, and they come back to reshoot and they go, oh, that's what I was supposed to be doing. So they reshoot a bunch of different stuff. It's on the page in this movie. So I'm super excited. Did you have a good time watching it?
I did. Yeah. I mean, and I actually like felt more feelings than I was expecting to feel in this movie too, which was a little bit shocking to me. But I mean, you're right. We're in good hands with a good director. We're in good hands with great writers. And then, of course, you have Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling as the two kind of main characters. And then even the supporting characters are solid actors too. So everybody's on top of their game. You said production design was top notch. Like, I don't have all of the, I feel like this is kind of like the MCU version of, somebody who's really like a Marvel comic book, aficionado, sees all kinds of little things in the MCU. It's like, oh wow, they put that in there for like a very small subset of people. I'm sure that there are things like that in this film. And I've, watched and read little things like, this is exactly how it was in the Barbie dream house or whatever. It's like the car that she has, the Corvette convertible thing that she has, is just a little bit too small for her. Like the windshield's way too low. And that's how it was on the actual Barbie car, so it's those little things where they do have this kind of like fan service, and that's the other thing, is that it's Greta Gerwig is a fan of Barbie. She grew up with Barbies, and so she's not someone who's trying to take down Mattel or take down Barbie, but she's using that as a framework to get out her opinions on feminism and her opinions on the patriarchy, and to a certain extent her opinions on capitalism, but not as much. I mean, it's a very tongue-in-cheek, the actual Mattel CEO is going to be, crying all the way to the bank or whatever you want to say. So right. I'm, there's a reason why Mattel was okay with this movie being made. I mean, on the initial blush, you're kind of like, wow, why would they ever, have a characterization of the CEO of Mattel who is so just absolutely just against women, not against women, but taking women for granted essentially, and reducing women down to a product. But it is a caricature, but it's not anything that is that they're too worried about, because they're obviously pretty protected. And just as long as people are excited about Barbie, that's what they're worried about.
Well, they were smart. They're definitely smart.
They're willing to take some punches. Yeah.
And some of those are soft punches, and some of them are pulled punches, and some of them you can tell that well, you can't tell. I'm assuming that she had to go a little light on the corporation and a little light on the corporate financial rule of the world of Mattel. So I'm sure they were like, well, maybe not that. But they allowed it because they know they have to step into the next evolution of their product. And apparently this is not the only IP that they're investing movies in, which I thought
14 Mattel properties.
I was a little disappointed when I heard that, because I was like, okay, so it is a MCU situation, and that's fine. If they can find filmmakers who are willing to make a film like this about their product, and they're willing to let them do it on some kind of level, then I'm all about it. But as
hold on, here's just very quickly, Daniel Kaluuya is producing a Barney movie. Lily Collins is starring, and Lena Dunham is writing and directing a Polly Pocket movie. J.J. Abrams is producing a Hot Wheels movie. Vin Diesel is starring in a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Hanks is starring in a Major Matt Mason movie.
Yep.
I don't know what that is. Peter Farrelly is doing one. I mean, Mark Forster, the director of Quantum of Solace and World War Z, is directing a Thomas the Tank Engine movie. I mean, so there's more. So they've already got things set up. This CEO's been here for, I don't know what it was, like 3 years or so. And so this is the opening salvo of a new revenue stream for or corporate tie-in for Mattel. So,
in the long run, whatever their intentions are, they can now fall back on the fact that, yes, we took criticism. Yes, we understand there are a lot of problems with the idea of Barbie. There are a lot of social issues that we've created, good, bad, or indifferent, with Barbie. And we're now going to give it over to one of the most incredible filmmakers of our time, Greta Gerwig, and she's not going to solve all the problems, but she's going to let you know that we know there are problems too, and that these problems are things we're willing to look at, and we're willing to go into the future with those in mind. So what do we do? Yes, it's a little bit of to jump to the end of the film, it's a little pacifying when you talk about the everyday Barbie and how they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. It's a little pacifying. What's America Ferrera's Gloria's character, but it also it lets the audience know that Mattel is listening, for better for worse, whether or not they turn, they're this greedy corporate overlords, which I don't know if they are or not, but by stereotype, one might assume. They still allowed this film to get greenlit. And this film says so much about an experience that I kind of knew about, but didn't really know about because I'm not a little girl who played with Barbie dolls. Like I told you pre-podcast, my sister loved Barbies. We would play together. I think I told you the story about Wonder Woman, but it was actually a Catwoman doll. She was having like a stage show or like a runway, and I was like, "Oh, here, Catwoman." She's like 4 inches too small. These are for Barbies, and she was very particular, but in the sweetest kind of way. She adored her Barbies. She loved her toys, and she would allow, like I told you earlier, my brother's G.I. Joes, which were the 16-inch with real hair. And her justification for that was because they have real hair, they're allowed to be in the fashion show. They're allowed to escort Barbie in the fashion show. But the fights over who sat up front in my brother's tanks or my brother's army stuff or my sister's, she had the big Winnebago, Barbie Winnebago. I'm not sure what it was called. And
that was in the movie.
Was it?
Yeah. And when they were going between Barbie Land and there was a camping scene when they're going between Barbie Land and Los Angeles.
Yes. So the point to all that is that I think it opens up conversations about things that we might have just gotten wrong in this world and societally accepted, and it opens it up for new conversations, and it opens up for people who, like, imagine being a single father of daughters and not being able to really have the language to have this conversation, and they get to be about 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're like, I want them to have good self-image, but how do I do that? There's nothing reflecting it. And then you take them to see the Barbie movie, and there's conversation after conversation after conversation you can have with your children, boys or girls, about how women are seen in this society, how women are reflected in this society, how women want to be seen, how women want to be reflected. Let's at least listen to it. Mm-hmm. So I'm only going to say this very briefly because we're not a political podcast, but people have had problems with this film, and they're having issues with the patriarchy and how many times they mention the patriarchy and man-hating and all this stuff that has come out. My bottom line for that is, if you are not listening to what somebody's trying to tell you and you become defensive about it, and you can be defensive about it, that I'm not judging you for being defensive. I'm saying that I think it might have hit a little too close to home to people who are not really hearing it for what I think the intention was, or at least what I took from it. Let's put it that way. So maybe the movie is talking to you and you're not listening. So I think that's what I came out of. And I've always said this, all I want people to do is listen to that side. I'm not saying that side's right or wrong, but you have to listen. Now, maybe it is active listening and maybe it's not. And maybe I'm on my soapbox. I don't care. The bottom line is that people want to be validated and listened to. And this film does it over and over and over again. And I want to mention something that you said a little bit earlier about commercialization and consumerism. It is in there. It's just not heavy-handed. Do you remember the scene when the mother, Gloria, the daughter, and Barbie are going back to Barbie Land, and they're on the jet ski? And Gloria says, I had these boots, but I lost one, and my mom wasn't going to buy a whole nother Barbie just to get another pair. That right there is a statement about how Barbie established their commercialization and their consumerism, because you could not buy just the boots separately. You had to buy the whole ski Barbie or ski action Barbie, mountain Barbie, whatever it is. I don't mean to make fun of. I don't know the actual name. So that alone to actually be able to buy your kid a doll and to buy the accessories, and then your child loses an accessory, but you can't buy an extra accessory without buying another doll or buying another play set or so forth and so on, is a statement about the money behind the product and the consumerism behind the product. That's at least what I think. Because I don't think Greta Gerwig, from my opinion, puts anything in a film that she doesn't have some kind of layered statement about. Whether or not you take it, I'm sure there's some superficial stuff in there. Absolutely there is. Stuff that's just fun. I think the stuff with the clothes is just fun. But it's also, when you see the clothes fly up and it says, jumpsuit, blah, 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 blah. That's also a statement about like antique roadshows and how they just told this lady who has one of those 1953 Barbies that she looks like in the Stanley Kubrick opening of the film, which it was just his birthday. So that was great. I was like, yes, that's so great.
I think he would have loved that, actually. I think Stanley Kubrick would have been like, this is amazing.
I think he could have rested easy after that point, because it is an homage at the same time. It is a statement about film. But that Barbie right there, the lady at the Roadshow had one, and it was worth $7,000. And that was just like the estimate. That doesn't necessarily mean what somebody who wanted one of those would pay for it. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that I think the film has everything in it that you need. And then on top of it, it's so freaking entertaining and so hilarious. It is laugh out loud funny. I laughed out loud so much I got self-conscious about it, because I didn't want to be that like weird middle-aged guy in the back of the theater laughing. There was another group of people that were getting all of the jokes that I were getting, or listening to the jokes that I was listening to. So, and that was a long tirade and that was a lot of information, but I felt like I have to get certain things in there because they are part of this experience.
Well, I think as far as the criticisms go, and even the humor too, I think the one character that kind of makes it more accessible to men, at least, it makes the views on women and the quote unquote patriarchy more accessible to men, is the Ken character, because Ken in Barbie Land is the allegory of women in the patriarchy, where their worth is tied to, whatever the man is, or whatever that is. Ken's day is only good if Barbie notices him. That line right there, I was kind of like, whoa, geez, I didn't, once I realized what they were doing and how they were moving forward with this, like, his worth is completely tied to another person. Like, and that is all it's always, and even when they get, when they're in LA and they get arrested multiple times, when they hold up the placards for their pictures at the police station, Ken's name is And Ken, because he just assumes that he's And Ken. So there is no Ken without Barbie. And he even says that in the movie. There is no Ken without Barbie. The only reason Ken exists is because of Barbie. I mean, it's the inverse of Adam and Eve. Eve was pulled from the rib of Adam. And so it was the similar thing, where there's no reason for Ken to be other than to serve Barbie. And so you look at that and you're like, well, wait a second. No, because like it's a guy and of course he's got other options, but then you look at that and you're like, oh wait, I see what they're saying here is that, like, and that was even with Barbie. I mean, the Barbie's saying, oh, you can be a doctor. And I know Greta Gerwig has said this in the past where, she was saying that, Barbie was a doctor when women didn't have a lot of options in the workforce. So that was, they were secretaries and things like that. So it was in some ways revolutionary, but at the same time, that's another item that a parent can buy their kid is Dr. Barbie. So it's kind of like serving two masters there. But I think that putting Ken in that position and then Ken going into the real world and seeing how, men are, you can say patriarchy as much as you want. You don't have to say that word, but just the fact that, all of the people on the construction site are men, and and all of these guys are, a guy is shooing away a woman, when she tries to like give him a coffee or whatever, and he's like, oh wait, you can do that? He's like, I didn't even know that was even possible. So it's opening up a whole nother world for him. So, and the fact that he wanted to go back and make, it was like manifest destiny. It's like he wants to go back and make Barbie Land Kingdom. Like that's his first, instead of him being like, man, I could do some good stuff in here. He's like, no, I want to take over Barbie Land. And I was like, wow, that's another statement on, just kind of like, I'm going to make this mine.
But the thing that makes that brilliant is the reason why he ends up doing what he does. That's what makes that brilliant. Because
he's doing it to show Barbie that, for various reasons, but
yeah. And that moment closer to the end of the film is so poignant and so well done. I just think that it's interesting that you reflect. It's so smartly done. This is so well written. Because Greta Gerwig never stands on a soapbox and points her fingers at people. She just says, hey, look at this in reverse. This is how this is in Barbie Land, but in the real world, it's this way. And the only reason why Ken has any bad feelings about it is because he just didn't know that could be the way it was, because it was reversed in his world. What she's saying is, don't look at Barbie Land. Look at our world. Look at all the people that you marginalize because you think that they're only there for you, or you're there for an accessory in my life, whatever that may be, secretary, physician, whatever it may be. Whatever the reason why a woman in this society is considered less than a man, it's reversed in Barbie Land. And instead of getting on a soapbox and pointing at people, she says, oh, let me point out this fact about Barbie Land, and how would you feel about it? How would you feel coming to a world realizing that you're only there to serve this person because you're there to stand on the beach, and what's he say? All
I do is beach. All I can do is beach. Like he's like even when he goes to the beach and he's like, the guy's like, oh, you can't be a life. He's like, you want to be a lifeguard? He's like, oh no, I can't do that.
I'm only qualified to stand right here like this. Hilarious.
But really, ultimately, nobody in Barbie Land, nobody is there to advocate for Ken or the Kens, and nobody even told them that they should be advocated for. They just felt like that was their lot in life. And it's a similar thing in even the United States. It's like, well, until like the early 1900s, women couldn't even vote. It's there's a whole half of the country couldn't even couldn't even give their input on where they wanted the country to go. And it's because the people making the rules were the men. So, it makes sense. It's like,
it's such an ingrained thing that we've just spent 10 minutes talking about Ken, a supporting character in a Barbie film.
But maybe that's the only way to really like get a guy to like, oh wait, that does make sense now.
Absolutely. So, if that's where you come in on the other side of this discussion.
Yeah.
Not anger and defensiveness and the man haters and all this other stuff. It's slow down. She's making a point about how women are treated in this world.
Sure.
If you cannot just take a second to listen, you're never going to hear it. And I'm not saying that I always do that, and I'm not the greatest of it all the time. I don't always see other people's point of views. As a matter of fact, most people who would know me would say the opposite. But I'm at least trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to listen to, whether or not I agree with it or not. So anyway, let's move on.
Yeah. All right. So this has got a lot of different like references in it, and I thought that it was pretty funny. Did you notice that there's all kinds of little like cameos in there too? I guess Dua Lipa, who did one of the songs, she's the mermaid, and John Cena is a mermaid. And Emerald Fennell. Did you see her?
Immediately saw her.
Wow.
And I knew about Pregnant Barbie because I was always like, wait,
it's
what?
Midge. Yeah.
Midge, right? Because her stomach is detachable.
What? Really?
Yeah, at first I thought the comment about, because that's just gross, or whatever Helen Mirren says, that's just disgusting. Whatever she says, I thought, well, are they trying to say that pregnant women are disgusting? No, that's not what they're saying. They're saying the idea of a detachable stomach, which they don't make reference to in the movie, is weird. It's just odd. It's like the pooping dog,
Yeah.
Sugar. The dog's name is Sugar because the person who owns him is Sugar Daddy.
Yo.
Which is not supposed to have a double entendre, but it's almost impossible not to think about that.
No wonder that got canceled or got removed.
The point is that I think that Midge is an idea of marginalized people. So yes, I saw that cameo immediately and I was like, oh, I hope she speaks. Oh, I hope she comes back. I don't care. The fact that these two incredible filmmakers are working together, I don't care. I don't care what the reason is. Did you also notice the Sex Education cast?
I haven't seen Sex Education, but I know there's like a bunch of people from it in there.
Yeah. Emma McKee, who looks a lot like Margot Robbie.
I guess that's what a lot of people say. I see it. Yeah.
Have you seen her with blonde hair?
No.
Okay. If you see her with blonde hair, which is funny because in this, she doesn't. She has dark hair.
Yeah.
And then what's his name? Let me see if I can find him.
It's like the Will Ferrell's assistant or whatever, or one of the low-level guys. Okay.
Yes. And the incredible part about that is, I'm trying to find him. I don't have him here. The incredible part about that is the character he plays in Sex Education is not the okay, no problem, I'll do whatever you need me to do. The character he plays in this is polar opposite of what he plays in Sex Education. So it was really interesting. And then what's his name? And I cannot pronounce his name and I don't want to mispronounce it. It's either Nukati Gatwa or Kati Gatwa. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the N is pronounced. As one of the Kens, he's also in Sex Education.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. So it's crazy. It's a crazy cross connection. Let me make sure. Yes, he is. I wanted to make sure. And he's incredible.
Of Canadians too, non-Americans. Yeah. Margot Robbie's not an American.
Ryan
Gosling's not American. Kate McKinnon, I think she's Canadian. So
she's phenomenal.
Yeah, we haven't talked about her yet.
Really brings something. Okay.
Yeah. So. Well, we could talk about Kate McKinnon. Let's talk about her because she plays Weird Barbie, as everybody calls her. But I see what they were trying to do there with the Matrix thing, and just her being the kind of like the. But her being the kind of like dispenser of exposition or information, and it was fine. I didn't really have a problem with it, but I did think she was pretty funny. I do think that there's a portion in this movie, like the way that they fix the problem of the kingdom, how to get the Kens from voting. I think that whole like procedure is the only part of the movie where it just kind of like, it's like they've crafted this whole scenario and this whole world and this whole situation, and they've asked me to believe in a Barbie land and a interface between Barbie land and LA and all of this stuff, and like I'm cool with that. But then once we get into their plot, their plan, it just seems to kind of like be a throwaway plan. It just doesn't make any sense, which you can say like, well, they're in Barbie land, but at the same time, it just seems like the rest of the movie was so well written that the mechanics of them, fixing Barbie land or retaking Barbie land seemed a little clunky to me. So did you feel like the movie ever got slower or
Well, I started to think about certain things. There were moments that were not as heightened, and there were moments that weren't as exciting, and there were moments that were more engaging. And I started to thinking about certain things that I thought were askewed, or, for lack of a better term, trying to poke holes in it. But then I realized I think that has a lot to do with my trappings. Like, I think the scene you're talking about bothers most people. Okay. It might bother most people because a lot of people don't like the idea of women manipulating men with their beings to get them to do stuff. That wasn't the problem I had. It was just that was actually some of the funniest parts of the movie where Issa Rae comes in and says like, "Oh, you're watching The Godfather?" And he's like, "Oh, you mean Godfather? Yeah, let me tell you about it." Like, I was like, "Oh, geez." Yeah.
That's
I did think to myself that it would have been nice, and I'm not trying to tell anybody to put anything in their film, but it did dawn on me later on that I'm sure there's some Barbie that knows about The Godfather. It's not like only men know about The Godfather and only
movie
men
critic
like.
Barbie.
Right. There you go. This
There you
is why. Let me explain it
Enola
from my
Dargis,
point.
right there.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So no, I didn't think it was a lull. I thought the whole singing into somebody's eyes uncomfortably with the little fires, the little
Yes, singing
beach
Push
fires.
too, singing
Oh
the Matchbox
my God.
20.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You cannot do it any better, because I think most people have been in that situation where somebody's trying to artistically
Woo them.
woo them. I was going to say seduce, but woo is a better. And it is so uncomfortable, and it's so stupid how intense they are. It's like me just wanting to come up to you and do a monologue and stare at you the whole entire
and you
time.
know that it said like 5 hours later, right? So he's been
Yes.
playing that song for 5 hours.
That's
Which is
hilarious.
That's
because
the really funny part.
90% of the time when you're in that situation, I don't know if you've ever been close to that situation, but they're always like trying to find the right notes, or they're, oh no, I haven't practiced in a while. And so that takes a good hour to get out of the way. Yeah. So no, I didn't find it a lull. I found it interesting. And I think I've read people's things, because I did a big deep dive and rabbit hole, delving into Barbie after seeing it, because now I was like, I'm in on it. I know everything I'm supposed to know. And a lot of people did have the problem with the manipulation, but I thought to myself, well, if you got to stop and reverse that. If they didn't have to do that, they probably wouldn't do that. And if Ken didn't put them in that situation to begin with, and Ken didn't just take over their whole land, it's called Barbie land. And if they didn't do all of that, then maybe they wouldn't have to come up with a reason to bring it back if they had never done that.
Yeah, what we didn't see is the part where Ken goes back and the president somehow just like says, I don't need to be president anymore. I'll bring this guy a beer. Like, we didn't see that.
Right.
So that's the other thing, is that like, so at what point did, Issa Rae's President Barbie say like, oh, well, I guess this is better. Like, I'm interested in that, I guess. Like, how does that happen? How do you give up your autonomy, and how do you give up your self-sufficiency and then immediately tie yourself to someone else and say like, oh, well, I'm happy if my man's happy, I
think it has to do with the fact that we pre-program women as they're evolving in this society, and that's making a statement about how we just brainwash, because they do kind of indicate that that's what it is, because then when they come out of it,
they kind of snap out of it.
I think the statement is more about how we just brainwash women throughout this entire world and this society to believe that get me a beer is the way that they want it to be. And I think that's what that statement's about. It's not about how did that happen. It's about that it does happen, and it is happening, and whether or not somebody's susceptible to it, or is easily influenced by it, or has no other choice but to be influenced by it, I don't think is the question at that point. The point is that it happens, it's happening. What do we do to reprogram ourselves to not be part of just serving somebody else, or not being who I was born to be, and blah, 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 blah. So I think that's what that's about. So no, I didn't think there was any lull. That's the answer to your question. I was thoroughly entertained the whole entire time, and it was thought-provoking, and it's emotional, way more emotional than I would ever expected. But I find it interesting that I just made that statement, because what was I expecting? Why would I not expect a Barbie movie to have touching Oscar-nominatable moments in it? Why? What is in me that says I'm thinking a Barbie movie?
Well,
really?
But isn't that a cynical? I mean, for me, I have a cynical view on that. It's like, Mattel is bankrolling this, and Warner Brothers is producing it and putting it out there. So they're going to want to
stacks it this way. But you and I, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry, are Greta Gerwig, Noah Baumbach, Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling. We are already stacked to know that these people deliver on the level we need for them to deliver. Yeah. They say stuff to us. They speak to us. They're true artists, and they're speaking to us. But we go into it thinking
Nah. Yeah, it's not going to work. So, but when I did not know that Margot Robbie was a producer on this, is a producer on this, and was a producer on this from the very beginning. So once the rights had lapsed multiple places, and then I don't know what it was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that, she became interested in it, and her production company became interested in it. And just the fact that she's kind of like weaponizing her fame and her her image to be like, okay, you want me to be Barbie? Well, let's figure out somebody who I'd be willing to be Barbie for. I want a script from Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach. And then they give her a script. And then Greta Gerwig went to her and said, because initially Gerwig wasn't supposed to direct the movie. She just was hired on to write a script. So then she brings a script to Margot Robbie and other people. And then she kind of does a big push to direct the movie. And so she had to, sell herself to do that. But just the fact that like at any moment, Margot Robbie could be like, well, I don't like it. We're, creative differences. We'll move on. That's like, because everybody, you see Margot Robbie and you're like, oh yeah, look at her. I mean, even that first scene where she's wearing the traditional or the first bathing suit that the first Barbie wore, it's like, yeah, her body type is that, stereotypical Barbie, which that's the other thing that I noticed is that she was not in any kind of like super skimpy stuff, which I guess maybe Barbies aren't super skimpy, but like I don't even think she was in like a bathing suit or anything. Even
she's
when
wearing that
when they
glow.
when they were rollerblading, she was in like a one-piece bathing suit, I guess.
Yeah.
But still, I don't know. I mean, it just seemed interesting to me where it wasn't like we're gonna try to get Margot Robbie to wear the least amount of. I mean, coming off of Babylon, it's like where she was wearing like 2 stitches of clothing. So, that's
why you get Margot Robbie to produce the film.
Yes.
So she can go, hey guys, okay, this scene is not about my shoulders and my breastplate. It's about this.
Yeah.
So let's okay, we need ruffles here. It's smart that, and I find it interesting, and I don't mean to sound like I'm criticizing, and I don't want you to feel defensive, but I find it interesting that the wordage you just used, you said she weaponized her Margot Robbie-ness. That's fascinating to me because in a world that we're in right now, you have to think about on some level women weaponizing their power because they have none of the power, and it becomes a weapon to use in reverse against somebody, when if we just allowed people, and I know sugarcoating everything, and I know I'm simplifying everything, and I'm kid gloving everything, and I know I'm on my soapbox, I hear myself, but I'm saying that from my experience, see the gray, I think that if we just went, you know what, Margot Robbie knows what she wants, and she's proven over these last 10, 12, 13 years, however long it's been, 10 years actually, it's not been that long, that she is a viable, reliable voice. So give it to her. But she actually has to be able, she has to come into a negotiating table and saying, no, we're not doing that. And if you want me as Barbie because you see me as Barbie because I look like Barbie, then this is what I want.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me.
And
that's
I think a lot
interesting.
of people, yeah. I think a lot of people
interesting to me.
Are doing the, like Greta Gerwig deserves a lot of the credit for this, but I think Margot Robbie was as essential in the making of this film, not only in her performance, but also I'm sure in her producing capabilities in making this movie, because like we said, we're now, she's not getting pushed around. She has the power to stand up, and that's hopefully gonna bode well for future projects of hers and for future projects of women who may not look like stereotypical Barbie to be able to get things produced. And so I mean that's hopefully gonna
once again, the language is interesting to me.
Yeah.
You said hopefully.
I'm not
saying you. I'm not saying
male dominated.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you. I'm saying the language that we use, because if we were talking about Noah Baumbach or whoever, Adam Driver, it wouldn't even be a question. It wouldn't even be a statement. Hopefully they'll be able to make the new whatever film. Of course they will be able to, because look what happened to Adam Driver's career after Marriage Story, after the Star Wars films, after all Girls, after all this stuff. It allows people to continue on and make different projects. And Harrison Ford, actually, speaking of Star Wars, he said without doing Star Wars, he would not have been able to do Mosquito Coast and all the films that we don't really associate with Harrison Ford, the creative choices that he's made because he was Han Solo. So yes, it's the same thing. And I hope that you're right. And I just heard what I said. That when Margot Robbie walks into a room with a film about a non-traditional, non-Barbie type female story, and they go, I don't know, I got the money for that. My film just made $160 million on its opening weekend and on the trajectory of making $1 billion before it comes out of the box office. So what do I have to do? Okay, I tell you what, I'll go to this production company. Bye. And then she'll have a bidding war. So I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. The actors who have championed other who have made their own production companies, whether it's like Brad Pitt and his Plan B, or I think George Clooney has his own thing that he does.
Reese Witherspoon does.
Reese Witherspoon does. Yeah, both. Reese and Drew Barrymore. So, but they're able, and half of the movies that they produce, they're not even half. Like only a handful of movies that they produce are they in, but they have the ability to kind of at least give rise to voices that may not be heard because they're not as tied to profits as much as bigger production companies might be. So that's kind of cool. Mark Ronson did the music. Do you know Mark Ronson? He's like a music producer mainly. I thought it was interesting the way that the music in this movie is similar to movies like Austin Powers, like the first two especially, that had music that was kind of made, and this happened. Footloose, I mean, Top Gun, a lot of 80s movies did this. This was normal, where you have songs that are written for the movie and they are in the movie, and there's like that also corporate tie-in of whether it's the Lizzo song at the beginning of the movie, Pink, and I loved it that the second verse is different than the first verse, and you're just like, oh, this is amazing, because we're storytelling, but we're also doing it with a Lizzo song. It's really cool. But they had a Lizzo song in there. They had the Dua Lipa song, the Billie Eilish song that was written, or at least used in this movie. I'm assuming it was written for this movie. Maybe it wasn't. But it's kind of hearkening back to those soundtracks that are, inextricably linked to the movie. Like, you can't think of the movie without the soundtrack and the soundtrack without the movie. So that's somewhat rare nowadays. It seems like where now you're going to take a song and you're going to use it in an impactful portion of a movie, but this is a song that has had a history beforehand, and now we're in a situation where it's like, well, now these songs are always going to be tied. I know with like Top Gun Maverick, there was the like Lady Gaga song at the end, but it had nothing to do with the movie. It didn't play a part in the actual movie, and so it seems like nowadays there's kind of like a people like getting Oscars. And so if you're a musician and you want to get an Oscar, you're going to write a song that they're going to play at the end of the movie, and it's going to potentially get you an Oscar. Like that Rihanna song at the end of Wakanda Forever, like Steph plays that song all the time. It's a great song, and it's very well done. But like it really doesn't, impact the film. If you took it out of the credits of the film, you could have had another piece of music that might have been just as evocative. But these songs are inherent to the film. And Mark Ronson wrote a few of them. He wrote I Am Ken, I guess. Is that what it's called? Just Ken. That's what it is. I
can't even.
And I didn't realize until after the end of the movie that his real emotional, realization at the end is just him saying the title of that song. I was like, oh, see, that's my problem. I don't pay attention to the lyrics of songs. I just don't. I'm
No, that's not true. You paid attention to the Barbie song and knew that the second verse was different.
Well, that's true. I did pay attention.
But it is like you have to.
Yeah,
in order
that
to
was more.
understand the second verse and the second scene. You have to.
But in general, like if you're just saying the chorus a bunch, like I'm not gonna really like lock into, whatever.
That's interesting to me. You're so specific and you notice so many interesting details, and you're a musician, but yet you're
Well, but I'm
That's
not a
interesting.
poet though. If I was a poet, I would probably pay attention to the
But you're in
words
love
more.
with film and poetry and music and all that other stuff. So
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just another layer of music that I'm more interested in the melody than I am in the.
I got you to pick your Oscars for the last 5 years now. So we'll work on it. We'll get you there. We'll get you there.
There you go.
It's already happened. It happened. Thank Greta Gerwig. She
go.
got you to listen to the lyrics to the thing. It's interesting that you were talking about the song at the end of the movie has become the song that becomes Oscar nominatable and wins traditionally, unless it's a James Bond theme.
Yes.
Speaking of Billie Eilish. But it would be nice for a song in a film that was written for a scene like the opening scene of the Barbie film or the Ken song or whatever it may be. It would be nice that that's the song that's nominated, because it does have, you're right. I see what you're saying about the end songs to movies. They are about the movie. They were written for the movie. They have some kind of feel about the movie, but they are not integral to the actual film. You're right. If you never see the end credits and don't hear the song, it's not going to change. And if you hear the song, you might not 100% emotionally connect to the film that you just watched because it's not there. So you're right. Well, that Tom Hanks film, Doing That Thing You Do that. What's that film?
That Thing You Do.
Yeah, that song is integral to the.
Yeah.
And I thought it should have won the Oscar because that song is played like 35,000 times in that film, and you never get tired of it. You never get tired. You always like, oh yeah, you're always bopping up and down whenever you. And the way they utilize it in the film is very interesting too, because sometimes you hear the whole thing, sometimes you don't. You hear them recording it, so forth and so on. So
yeah, but that was 25 years ago, 30 years ago almost.
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah,
you got a point.
So, anyway, all right. Well, you got anything else that you want to talk about? America Ferrera's monologue, maybe?
Well, a lot of people are, I knew that the very first thing I was going to text you was kind of a negative thing. So I stopped. I was going to say it's a triumph. Now we have to wait for the backlash, because there's going to be a backlash. You just know there is. And I don't necessarily think that I thought the backlash was going to come from all this political stuff that's happening. I just think when something is as grand and as big as Barbie is going to get and is getting and has gotten, that there's always people who are ready to pull it apart and ready to tear it apart and all that other stuff. And this particular monologue has been championed, and now it's being picked apart, and the backlash is surrounding that. Now, some people, movie critics, have said that they thought it brought the film down to a low pulse instead of the vibrant pulse that the film has all the way through. And then there are people who are talking about how it's just not platitude, but it's platitude-like over and over and over again. But I have a completely different take on it. When somebody said it kind of stopped the pace, I could kind of understand that. When they thought that it was kind of preachy, I can kind of understand that. But when, where, and how are women ever going to get to say this in a movie if they don't get to say it here? And if they don't get to say everything that they're thinking right here and now, when are they going to get to say it? So let the people speak. Did I think it stopped the pace like I was just talking about? I don't know. The point is that all of the things that she lists, I kept thinking, if that's the way that it is, and I know that on some level that that's the way that it is, there's no break. There's no period of downtime where a woman doesn't have to be this or doesn't have to be that or doesn't react this way or can't react or can react or does react. And if they do. So you remember the movie, I can't remember the name of it right now, and it had the Black Angel in it, and it was the movie about the slave revolt, and I can't remember the name of the film. For the life of me, I can't remember. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Is it fairly recent, within the last 5 years?
No,
or so?
I would say it was, yes, 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
It's in the beginning of when we were doing a podcast. Anyway, there's a very traditional looking angel with the white and the wire sticking up in the halo and the fake wings. And I was like, why did he go so stereotypical? And your response was, because that image is never seen. It's probably never seen. We don't get to see a young African-American female dressed as an angel as a cliche in films. The angel image is a cliche, but this young black woman being the angel is not. So maybe just because that image doesn't exist in film, that's why the filmmaker chose to do it. Now, I'm not saying you were right. I'm not saying you were wrong, but I thought that's an interesting thought because it's never been seen before. Why not show it finally? That makes sense to me. I feel the same way about Gloria's speech at the end. Let them say what they have to say. And then if we have another 100 years of film of women saying that over and over again, then we can start saying, hey, well, you're slowing down the pace of the film. You're saying too much. Your platitude. Slow down. We get it. We heard it 1,000 times. We haven't. So let them speak.
Yeah, I think that so it is a monologue, yes. But it also is, if it wasn't as long as it was, it wouldn't be as impactful because it's essentially she's building like a Jenga tower, except she's not like crossing the pieces. She's just like stacking one Jenga piece on top of the next Jenga piece. To the point where you're like, the more Jenga pieces there are, like it's gonna fall over. Like it's everything that she's like, okay, you have to take account for this, but you can't do that. You have to take account for this, but you can't do that. You have to feel this way, but you can't feel that way. Like she's saying like all of this stuff has to be held in your brain at the same time, and you just have to live. Like you just have to move forward. And so that's, if you said like, well, it's kind of hard to do this. If she said like, well, it's kind of hard to be a mom. Like, okay, you're not really giving me anything there. I'm sure it is hard to be a mom, but once she starts, identifying individual situations or individual perceptions or how people might expect you to act, but then what's important, but what you can't societally say is important, or like how, like what pocket do you have to operate in to be deemed satisfactory? That's kind of what she's saying. So,
and I find it fascinating that we are uncomfortable with a 3-minute monologue, but imagine what women have to go through every day. Yeah. That's what they have to go through. And all we had to do was sit there and listen to it. And we're uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. It's like, I don't mean to be cynical or sarcastic. It just, I think the film is so well done and speaks volumes that I just wish people would just go and take it all in and just for a second say, okay, well, that's how Greta Gerwig feels about it because she wrote this. Well, is that true for my wife? Is that true for my daughter? Is that true for my sister? Is that true for my transgender daughter? Is that true? And if it's true, then what can I do to stay out of the way of making it better, or stay out of the way of making it worse? What can I do? And all we have to do is listen to a 3-5-minute monologue. And that's all she's expecting from the audience. And yet it's become this thing. Yeah. I think that means she hit close to home. She put her finger and her finger on the pulse. And she also hit the nail on the head big time. She really did. The only other things I want to talk about is that I even am a little, I don't know, disappointed in myself because they were talking about Ryan Gosling and then Oscar nominations came up and Oscar nominations for Barbie. And I kind of slightly rolled my eyes and went, really, Barbie movie? And I'm disappointed that that's the reaction that I had because I should know better. I just contradicted everything I just advised everybody on this podcast to be and say. I did exactly the same thing. And then I saw it. And I do believe Greta Gerwig should win the screenplay Oscar. Now, there's a little bit of a thing about adapted original. They're not sure which way they're going to go because this is not technically an adaptation of something else, but it is an adaptation of a concept in something else. So they're not exactly sure. But I hope that they go with original screenplay because it is by far the most original screenplay that I've seen this year. I haven't seen, it's still the middle of the summer and still we got December coming and I still have to see Oppenheimer and all these other films.
Past Lives is supposed to be very good too.
Yeah, there's a whole list of things. But if at all, just for the poetic justification of thinking a film like Barbie shouldn't be Oscar nominatable, it would be great that finally Greta Gerwig wins an Oscar for screenplay and it be this. Because I think it also gives it weight. And I also think it gives it a different frame of understanding. Well, it won the original screenplay. So it's people in their mind think that means something. So they go and they see it because it's different than what they thought. And I think it's a Best Picture nomination. It's a Best Director nomination. It's a Best Actress nomination. And I am going to celebrate Ryan Gosling from this point on as Best Supporting Actor because I just don't understand what he did. He is drop dead hilarious the whole entire film. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of really funny stuff that doesn't involve Ken. Did you catch the line that when they were going in Barbie Land in the car with the mother and daughter and Barbie, when they were going back? And the daughter says, "Does a big hand come down and play with you?" And Barbie goes, "No, that'd be weird." Did you catch that line?
Yeah.
Me and 3 other people in the theater cackled for like 2 minutes afterwards because that is hysterical. It's the way Barbie responds that made that line trip me. That said, and there's tons of things that Margot Robbie does when she sees the elderly lady on the bus stop, which the executives wanted to take out of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they always want to take the one scene that makes the film work out? They want to take Over the Rainbow out of the film. What are you talking? Have you not learned this? And actually, they were speaking to Greta Gerwig and they were saying, what did you have to fight for? What did you have to make sure that they didn't want to take out? And that was the scene. And I was like, of all the scenes that, she's beautiful in that. Margot Robbie is exquisite in meeting the teenager scene. And because you could tell she doesn't even really know what fascist means, but she doesn't like being called it. And then
she did say something like, "I don't own the means of production or the railways." Or
yeah.
So technically she does know one definition. Yeah. What that definition of fascism
I don't think she knows why she's being called a fascist. Maybe that's what it is. The scene when they come into Santa Monica for the first time and they're wearing their outfits and Ken is like, "Hey, I like this. And it feels great." And she's like, "I don't like it. And I definitely feel violent undertones." Mm-hmm. The look on her face is fascinating. And then, the scene with her and Ken at the end when he's like, "Hey," and she says what she says to him, the "you are you and I and me, and we are not, it's not Barbie and Ken. You're Ken and I'm Barbie, and that's okay." It's so well handled by Margot Robbie. There's not an ounce of judgment in her voice. There's not an ounce of talking down to him. Nothing. She's realized this, and she realizes she needs to help him realize that, and that's all she wants to do is help her friend out. Help her friend realize he is more important than just what people say he's supposed to be important for. It's a great message, and it's well delivered. That said, I love the fact that we're in a time frame that the Academy can now look at Everything Everywhere All at Once and say that's an Oscar nominatable film. Jamie Lee Curtis's performance is an Oscar nominatable performance. Now it's a win, and now the film is a win, and it's expanding. Maybe not as quickly as most people would like, but it's expanding. So for my brain to go, Ryan Gosling, Ken, Oscar nomination, really? Come on. Is disappointing to myself because, one, I should know that I'm going to get smacked around and I'm going to get smacked off that soapbox because that's exactly what happened. his timing, and it's all on the page. I believe it's all written, but his timing when he goes to dance in that dance lineup and he's doing that face, dude, I can't wait to see the movie again. I would like to see the movie again on the big screen because the production value is over the top great. But I can't wait to see the movie where I can just watch it and laugh out loud over and over again at the things that just were unbelievably hysterical. And then he has to sing 2 songs back to back, basically, and he gets away with both of them. And he creeps you out in a not a like creeper kind of way, but just like a icky kind of like, I don't want you looking at me when you're playing your acoustic guitar kind of way. And yet you still feel for him and you still feel like what? And that moment I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, close to the end when she's talking about you did this and you did this. And he goes, and so how did it make you feel? It's so sharp and so poignant and so devastating that you realize he's doing all of this because he was hurt. Mm-hmm. No one recognized him as a person. Everybody objectified him. And like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, but how do you play that? How do you get that across without sounding like you're on your soapbox? And he does it over and over and over again. And then he has that great moment at the end with, it's Barbie and Ken. And the fact that he chokes up during it and his voice cracks during it is amazing. Is it an Oscar nominatable performance? Yes, it is. And depending on who gets nominated, it would be fantastic if something like that won, because now we know not to just judge a book by its cover and think that this person who died of this disease or had this malformity or this handicap or this problem or this crying scene or this triumphant scene, whatever, is not just what Oscars are about. It's also about being able to pull off a comedic timing that I think only Greta Gerwig could have written and Ryan Gosling could have done, period. So I'm going to be an advocate for Ken being an Oscar nominatable performance.
Nice. All right. Well, I've just completed renovations on my Mojo Dojo Casa house, so you're invited.
Okay. The funniest part about that is the women's response.
Like, you don't even need to say casa or house.
Well, yeah. She goes, or casa.
Yeah.
So every time he said it afterwards, I was laughing at what they were thinking.
Yeah.
It's so, you don't have to say dojo. And then I think it's American for her. It might be the teenage girl who's excellent, by the way. What is her name? What is her? Can you have it up?
Yep, I have it up. Her name is not Alexandra Shipp. Her name is Ariana Greenblatt.
Excellent. Star in the making. And the way that that's written is that she's going to have a moment with her mom at the end, and it's very sweet, and that's going to happen. But the way that it's written, if you watch her, Greta Gerwig, really brilliant in that scene where she tears her apart in the cafeteria, and as Barbie's walking away, the girl kind of feels a little remorse for just being mean to somebody, and that's not a quality of that cynical, sarcastic teenager you see quite often. That dark-edged teenager who's too cool for this kind of stuff. You don't see that. I shouldn't have just been mean to somebody. I don't really know who that person is. I think she has mental health issues, and it flashes over her face. And then when you do get that, she's kind of fighting it the whole entire time. What is with this song? And at that point, you kind of are thinking that as an audience member too.
The Indigo Girls song. It's like the
I
only
love that song.
Yeah,
I know. I love that song and I love that album. But and it was during my college years, and we had just graduated right as that came out. So the whole I spent 4 years prospering to the higher ground. The lyric you actually hear in the song, I got my paper, now I'm free. That actually was poignant back in the day. So anyway, she's kind of rolling her eyes, and then she starts to sing along with her. The way that she plays it and the way that it's written is extremely well done. But anyway, I think it's her who said, yeah, and you don't have to say casa either. It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
No, that's great. All right. Well, are you good?
I could talk for hours about this movie. So
Right.
yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.